Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. It's great to see you. Hope you're all doing well. I thought it was about time I came back on and did another video, as it's been a fair while. So, this being Easter weekend, and in a couple of weeks' time, the second anniversary of this very channel, and more importantly, as this will be going out on Easter Sunday, meaning that tomorrow Epic will be available for streaming in your own home, I thought, great time to come on and, in the spirit of celebration, talk about a series of releases that celebrated Elvis's chart success, Elvis's single releases. And I think arguably one of the most important series of releases in his entire career. Now, it seems odd to talk about Elvis in terms of compilations, because really most of his releases were compilations. You know, we know that he didn't go into the studio often with an album release in mind. He went in and recorded material that he wanted to do, and then RCA used that as they saw fit. So it could be reasonably argued that the very first compilation was his first album, because it wasn't all made up from one session. There were throwbacks to Sun Records on it. So that idea of putting stuff together to make releases started at the very beginning. But in terms of a specific release to put together, if you like, his greatest hits, his big hits, RCA nearly were the first to do that. And when I say the first, I mean the first for anybody. Before they did it, the concept of a greatest hits package, if you like, a best of, was unheard of. You know, albums were a secondary concern for all artists. The singles chart was where it's at. So putting these together in a one release wasn't something anyone had done. But RCA were kind of beaten to it by HMV in the UK. So in October 1957, HMV put out The Best of Elvis. Now, this isn't original, this is a French repress, so it doesn't have the HMV logo as RCA. This was done some time ago, but this is the cover of the original. This is pretty much, give or take, how the original looked. Now, in the case of HMV, releasing this in 57 wasn't so much a celebration of Elvis's single chart success. It was them making hay while the sun was still shining, because they were losing the license to release Elvis's material in the UK. So, you know, like I said, make hay while the sun shines and put out a release of bits and pieces that hadn't appeared elsewhere. So The Best of Elvis, well, actually, when you look at the track list, it's not a bad summary, actually, but the intention behind it wasn't really to you know, celebrate Elvis's chart success. It was more, let's get another release out while we still can. But this is the first best of release in modern times, if you like. And when you think about how this paved the way, not only for Elvis and his greatest hits best of compilations, but for every other artist that came in his wake, with greatest hits and best of compilations, it's just something that became the norm in the years to follow. But this is really October 57, the first time that we see anything quite like this. But shortly afterwards, in March 1958, RCA put together Elvis Golden Records. Note the golden, because that does change with time. Now, this is a UK press. I haven't got an original US press. There were some slight differences. The font on the original was a pale blue. Unfortunately, this isn't even a first press of the UK version. The original, these ones that came out had really flimsy covers. Now, the original one in the UK had a booklet which basically replicated the booklet that our American cousins got with the previous release, Elvis's Christmas album. So it was a lot of publicity shots from Jailhouse Rock. So the first iteration in the UK had an 8-page booklet, and then that was reduced to a 4-page booklet, both with gatefold covers. And this is the one that came after that still had a gatefold cover, but it just had a little pocket that the album went in. But these are really flimsy. So to get one in really nice condition, I'm still after one of that very first release with the full booklet in it. But to find one in good condition is a significant amount of pennies to shell out. So I'm still on the lookout. So this is the best I've got of a fairly early one. Now in the UK, we did get a different track list to the American release. So we removed Loving You, Jailhouse Rock, Teddy Bear, and another track that now escapes me. And we got 4 Sun cuts. Now, while that was great for UK fans in 1958 to get Sun records that they hadn't had before, it kind of diluted the whole gold records approach, because none of those Sun records were gold awarded million sellers. So it was only really the US iteration that can claim it was made up of bona fide million selling gold records. And what was unique about the UK release, it was the only Elvis release that came out on the Red Seal, RCA's Red Seal label, which if you look at it is kind of a reverse of the red spot label. Instead of black and red, you get red and black. Quite why they put it on Red Seal, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't really been able to find that out. Because Red Seal itself was exclusively really for classical music and soundtracks. So why they decided that the first Elvis compilation of hits they put out would be on the Red Seal, I'm not entirely sure. But, as I say, it did dilute the idea of gold records a bit by having a different track list. But the reason was that a lot of the UK releases in the early 50s, or the early part of Elvis's career, had different tracks to the American ones. So they then had to work out, what have we already put out, what's already been on albums, etc. But the American release, now I've got another UK here. Now this is when it went into a single sleeve and not a gatefold, and this one is in much better nick. It's a stronger sleeve than the other one, and I think this one might be, again, it's Red Seal, and that's not the original inner sleeve that's got in it. But yeah, this whole idea of let's put out Elvis's singles was really the first example of the Colonel and RCA double dipping. So they didn't put singles on albums because they wanted those singles to be the big sellers, and they didn't want to dilute their chart success by making them available on album so people wouldn't need to buy the singles. But of course, once they'd had their chart life, once they'd had their success in the spotlight as singles, well, then they were fair game to put on albums. So this idea that you could put them all on an album was a win-win-win, really. For the people that didn't buy singles and preferred albums, this was a chance to get all those big tracks that they didn't have before. For the people that had bought them as singles, well, they could get them on an album and play them all together rather than having to keep changing with them. It was you could see that it was a bit of a no-brainer. And the US version is a monster of a release. On the tracks on there, they together represent over 20 million single sales. Unbelievable. 17 platinum certifications for those tracks. The album itself sold over 8.8 million copies. 6 times platinum certification. It's Elvis's second best-selling album underneath the Christmas album. It's just a monster of a release. I don't have. This is probably this gives a rough approximation of what the US cover looked like, but it still hasn't got the right, and it didn't have the track lists. We'll see one that looks closer in a minute. But what this is the Canadian reissue from 1978. So they issued loads of Elvis's albums in gold vinyl, staying reasonably faithful to the original sleeves, and you got the nice gold vinyl. And they did come with US style inner sleeves, but of course we go, how far do we go? We should go, I would have thought, to Moody Blue somewhere. We've certainly got Elvis Presley Boulevard. Oh, we've got Elvis in Concert as well, so that tells you this is a later release. But this one here does replicate more accurately the US cover. So the original US with the pale blue writing. You've got underneath there has got the original RCA Victor and Nipper logo. But this is the release from a couple of years back, Walmart exclusive on gold vinyl. So as you can see, the sleeves, even on the UK ones, stay fairly consistent. But this one is a really, really nice gold vinyl. It's one of my favourite gold vinyls because it really does look like a gold record. I'd say the ones that the Canadians put out in 78 are more yellow than gold, to be honest, but that's a lovely, lovely release of that. So there we have the original iteration of gold records. Now, in November 1970, the UK decided that it needed a reissue, but they totally redesigned the cover. And I think you'll agree, they made a pretty good job of it, really, with a great shot from the 68 special. And did we... No, it's got different text on the back, but we still went with a text-laden back. And this is by 1970 on your orange RCA Victor label. So really, they took a classic album cover, they redesigned it and made a pretty good job of it. What they didn't make a pretty good job of was the fact that it's in awful reprocessed stereo, so they kind of ruined the sound a bit, but great cover nevertheless. So that's Golden's the point. Golden Records Volume 1. We got a sort of update reboot of it in 1997 on CD. So this was put out for the 20th anniversary of Elvis's passing. You can see that sticker. And you got the original album, and in this case, Elvis' biggest selling album of all time. Now, I think by that it means in its original iteration, because the Christmas album is the best-selling album of all time, but that is in all its different iterations and in all its sort of reissues later down the line, whereas this just means gold records in its purest form with this track listing. So Elvis' biggest selling album of all time, featuring 9 #1 hits plus 4 bonus tracks. So we did get 4 bonus tracks on here. So we got That's Alright, Baby Let's Play House, Mystery Train and Blue Suede Shoes. But this was a really nice little release, putting it out with its original cover. It even is just kind of, I don't know if that is pale blue actually. I think they've gone with white. But nice that they chose a gold record approximation for the disc itself. You've got the original repress of the rear sleeve and a fairly sort of standard booklet with not too much in it, but then we are talking 1997, so we weren't really getting the kind of luxury booklets back in those days. If you want luxury for gold records, golden records, I'll keep emphasising that, the FTD release is a good place to go. So this gives you 2 discs, and you do get some outtakes. And again, we get that back sleeve replicated, period correct Jailhouse Rock shot, and our 2 discs. And of course, being FTD, we get a nice booklet, fantastic. You know, what a great sort of way to have this on CD. And I know this stuff's available on other releases, so you could argue that having the gold records FTD is not essential these days, but I think it's nice to have it all together for such a landmark release. So there we go, 1958 Gold Records Volume 1. Now I'm going to have to make sure, because I've got rather a big pile of stuff and I don't want it all squashing. So we now move on to Volume 2. Volume 2 comes out, it's less than it's 2 years since the first one. And I think it's important to think about that in context. Elvis was the first one that warranted a best of greatest hits compilation. Within 2 years, he was still selling singles in such massive numbers that he warranted a second greatest hits compilation. His contemporaries, most of them hadn't even had a single greatest hits compilation, and he was already on his second one. I mean, wow. So, Gold Records Volume 2, and that's why I was emphasising the golden. So your first volume is Golden Records, but by the second volume it's Gold Records. Why they didn't stick with golden, I'm not sure. But in America, it had a different title. It was known as 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong. Now that title came from a comment by RCA A&R man Steve Scholes, and he said, and I quote, "Every record Elvis has ever made for us has sold over 1 million. Since January 1956, we've sold 50 million Elvis Presley records in this country alone, not counting foreign sales or albums." So, the marketing machine, the hyperbole goes into action, and the title of the album is 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong. But that's a strange claim, because he's saying they sold 50 million records. But if the amount of records sold equated to the amount of fans, that would mean every fan only bought one record. And they're fans, right? So they're going to be buying all his releases, or many of his releases. So the actual veracity of that claim, 50 million Elvis fans based on 50 million sales, doesn't really stack up, does it? And I think RCA in the UK probably thought along the same lines, because it didn't have that moniker in the UK. It was Elvis Golden Records. So, you know, in the US, they went with 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong, and its sort of subtitle, if you like, was Elvis Gold Records Volume 2. But in the UK, they dropped the 50 Million Elvis Fans, but they went with Golden, so they stayed with Golden to follow on, because it's Volume 2, right? So if the first one's called Golden Records Volume 1, then the second one must be Golden Records Volume 2, otherwise it's not Volume 2. No. Anyway, so this was the UK release. This is not a first press. This is a red spot, so this is about 64-ish, but the cover's exactly the same. And what an iconic cover. What an iconic release, full stop. Elvis in his nudie Cohn designed gold lame suit that throughout 57 he was wearing in concert, although he only ever wore the whole ensemble in concert 3 times. And most of the time he would opt for black trousers with a stripe, like a tuxedo type bottom, but with a jacket. So, you know, this is an absolute barnstormer. Again, this sold 2.54 million copies and is platinum certified. And this was released in the US in November 1959. So this was the kind of precursor to Elvis coming back from the army. You'd had 2 compilation albums before that. You'd have For LP Fans Only, then A Date with Elvis, sort of mining that back catalogue and keeping him in the public consciousness while he was away in the forces. But this was kind of the, okay, you know, he's been selling in such numbers that we can give him a second volume, and justifiably so. Again, bona fide million-selling gold records on here. Absolute fantastic. And I think it can be argued with this volume and the first volume that they could easily be standalone albums, that they don't need to be seen as greatest hits or compilations as such. They work well as standalone albums, and I think almost them being compilations does them a bit of a disservice. The great thing about them is the cohesiveness of the time scale that they've got. So if you look at volume 1 is January 56 to May 57. That's when the recordings come from. And volume 2, this one, is February 57 to June 58. So both of them are compressed into those 2-year timescale periods, and it gives the album a real cohesive feel. Now this time the UK track list and the US track list was the same, I think. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I'm talking rubbish, as we'll see in a minute. Actually, we got more tracks in the UK, which had become a bit of a trend. The later 50s album compilations in the UK did get more tracks than the US. I'm not sure why. So what we've got here, we haven't got a US one as such. Oh, actually, this is the Legacy reissue that came out a few years ago, 2020. And this replicates the US sleeve. So as you can see, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. And you've got your Magic Millions Victor LPM 2075 catalogue number. And the back is pretty similar to the UK one. But what this will do is show us our difference in track list. So we get Lovin' You, Teddy Bear, Jailhouse Rock and Treat Me Nice on the UK one that wasn't on the US one, which is interesting because that's the track I couldn't think of earlier. So when I talked about the original UK first release, I said that 4 of the tracks were dropped for Sun recordings. Those 4 tracks that were dropped, Loving You, Teddy Bear, Jailhouse Rock and Treat Me Nice, are the 4 tracks that were dropped from volume 1 in the UK, but they were on volume 2. So that's what I meant about the UK swapping tracks around and what have you. So yeah, we did get more tracks in the UK, but that's it's a 64 press, but it's an original UK sleeve. That's the Legacy reissue. I have got the Canadian. We're going to go gold vinyl, but as I said, I would say these are more yellow. Well, what do we think? Yeah, they're more yellow, aren't they, than gold? But pretty similar rear. Some blurb at the top. And then I have got this one, which is a Vinyl Lovers cheapie. I think this was about £12. So this does its best to sort of replicate the American original, but you've not quite got the logo right there, and there's a border around it. And you do get a few extra tracks. I think you get Hard-Headed Woman, Don't Ask Me Why, Stuck on You, and It's Now or Never. And you get a completely different back cover. But that was a cheapie, as I say, it was about £12 or something. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So, Volume 2. Now, as with Volume 1 in the UK, they decided that it needed a refresh in the early 70s. So, we have this little beauty that came out in 71. And I think you'll agree, June 1971, what a staggering cover. It's interesting how, by this stage, it's RCA Victor. You don't need a name, you just need that image. There's your sleeve. Utterly stunning. So I think, as with Gold Records Volume 1 in the UK, they managed to pull it out of the bag when they reissued it in the 70s in terms of sleeve design. Went with a shot from 68 Special on the back. But again, unfortunately, they ruined it a bit by making it electronically reprocessed stereo, which in most people's minds, and I think quite rightly so, is not as good as the original mono. So full marks for the cover release, less so for what you did to the sound, RCA. Right then, Volume 3. I think Volume 1 and 2 can legitimately be said to be standalone albums in their own right. And I think you can stretch the same to Volume 3. Volume 3 comes out in August 1963 and is a great standalone release. And I know Mark from Mark's Elvis from Everyone channel loves Volume 3. We miss you, Mark. But in a way, it's a bit bittersweet, Volume 3, because it kind of robbed us of the album that never was. Elvis went into Studio B in May 63 and laid down some tracks, which the tracks would appear over various bonus songs on soundtracks and single B-sides and what have you. But I think the fact that RCA decided to put out a third iteration of Gold Records kind of put paid to that. So this was the album that stopped us getting a new Elvis studio album in 1963. So as I said, it's a bit bittersweet, because as great as this is, we didn't get that studio album. But, Elvis, up until this period, was still king of the charts. So you think about how significant that is. Not only did he warrant one best of compilation, 2 years later he warranted a second, and then another 4 years down the line, 4 years, 59, yeah, a third volume of Gold Records, a third volume of million sellers, bona fide million sellers. It's a staggering achievement in such a short space of time. Nobody else has ever achieved anything as momentous as that. And this is made up of fantastic. It's a great listen. And it's interesting because we are still golden. And even in the US, it was golden. So in the UK, we had Golden 1, Golden 2, Golden 3. In the US, they had Golden 1, Gold 2, Golden 3. So why we're flip-flopping between gold and golden, I'm not sure. But what a fantastic release. Just look at that track list. I think this is a red spot. It is. So it's probably, by the time it comes out in the UK, yeah, it would have been red spot, I think. But what a fantastic release. And quite significant, really, because Good Luck Charm which would be on here would be Elvis's last #1 for 8 years. So this is the in a way one of the last big hurrahs for that golden record series, because he gets deeper and deeper, as we know, into the movies from this point on, and the records don't sell in the kind of numbers that they had done in that very early part of his career. But this is absolutely staggering. It's still coherent. I still think it works as an album, and that's because it still compresses the timescale of the releases on it, as the other two did. So it's still a 2-year timescale. We've got March 1960 to October 1961 in terms of the recording. So again, there's a cohesion, there's a cohesiveness to it. So I think it really does stand up. Probably, I would argue, maybe 1 and 2 are real classic albums that really stand up as they could have just been albums. But I don't think Volume 3 is far off. Let me know in the comments what you think. But Volume 3, I've got this version of it. And of course, I've got the Canadian 1978 gold version. So that shows you more of an approximation of what the US sleeve looked like on the rear, as opposed to the UK one, which is quite significantly different. And just verify on our gold vinyl. So this is, I think this is I was going to say the golden period, but you know, the peak period for the gold record series for me is 1, 2 and 3, and I think it's probably generally accepted that that's the case, because by the time we get to 4, there's been a shift. Elvis isn't selling singles in the same kind of volume that he once was, and well, if you think about it, the first 3 releases were genuine celebrations. Let's put them out and show just how great this guy's doing in the charts, just how many he's selling, just how, you know, huge he is. Unfortunately, by the time Volume 4 is put together, and it comes out in early 68, I think January 1968 in the US, it's more a case of, let's revisit that winning formula, because we need to do something to halt the decline in sales of Elvis records. So it's raison d'etre, if you like, is slightly different by the time we get to 68. And I think as great and as much as in some ways it's kind of my favourite one, but that's for nostalgic reasons really. But in some ways, you know, it's the poorer cousin. It's not got a cohesive time scale on it anymore. Whereas the first 3 volumes were 2-year time periods where the recordings were taken from. This one spans June 1958 to June 1968. We've got 1966, sorry. We've got a 12-year time period. So that takes away the cohesiveness of the material on it. You know, you end up with B-sides of tracks where the A-side had been on previous ones, certainly Volume 3. And there are way more B-sides on this one than there are A-sides. So you can see that they're trying to continue that series, that theme, but they're struggling a little bit because of where Elvis was as a chart artist at that time. So, you know, it's hard to knock it, because for me it's a fantastic release, and I'm sure many of you feel exactly the same. But it just isn't as spectacularly successful in what it sets out to do as Volumes 1 to 3. But here we go. Gold Records Volume 4. Now, as I'm sure many of you are aware, there was a bit of a mistake when this was pressed in the UK, because I think originally Never Ending was intended to be on the album, but ended up not being on the album, and they put Love Letters on. But a few of, well, the original pressings slipped out with Never Ending listed Although on the back, where are we? Yeah, we've got love letters. So, you know, this was a single production. So when you open this out, it folds round and sticks together. But somehow in the pressing plant, part of it said love letters, and yet the front said never ending. So yeah. So this is an original mono on red spot, and I've got a pressing from a year later, so this is on a small orange label, and as you can see, we now have love letters correctly listed. The back's exactly the same. Back's exactly the same, but the front replaces never ending with love letters. So that's a mono original and a stereo, which would probably be 68, 69 with a small orange label. But I think you'll agree, a fabulous cover and still a great listen. It's still a great listen. It just isn't quite what the other three were. And the reason I have a soft spot for this, and the reason that I've got all these in these Canadian gold stroke yellow pressings, is because of this one, although this isn't the original that I had. So there you see the US back as opposed to the UK. But the reason that I absolutely adore this album is in 78, 79, my family, I can't remember what the celebration was, but I was due a present. Maybe we were getting something ready for Christmas, or they were going to get me a present and I get to choose something. And at the time in the UK, you could send off, there was a place in Leicester called Trends that used to advertise in the Elvis Monthly and Elvis Fan Club magazines, and you could get a lot of Elvis stuff from there. And we were rather naive and we thought it was a shop. So we went there. Leicester is about 50 miles from where I live, 45, 50 miles from where we live. Got there and it wasn't a shop. It wasn't home to the public. You couldn't get in. So I think rather than disappoint me, my mum and dad took me a little bit further into Derbyshire to the very famous Heenall Record Centre, where again they supplied a lot of Elvis records, merchandise and all sorts of things to Elvis fans in the UK through the Elvis Monthly and the Fan Club magazine. And they were a shop and they were open. So I got to choose one present, and this was on the racks. I saw the collector's gold vinyl edition. It was like Willy Wonka, and I'd seen the golden ticket. I had to have the gold vinyl edition, and that's what I got to take away with me. And that was, as I say, 78 or 79. So I would have been, 13, 14, something like that. And so I've got an incredible, and I remember putting this on the turntable and things like Witchcraft, Please Don't Drag That String Around, Ain't That Loving You Baby, What I Say. These were all new to my ears. So, you know, I love this. I love this. Don't get me wrong, I love Volume 4. But interesting, going back, it's gold. Even in the UK, it's gold. So we've gone, I don't understand. Where's the consistency? Because if they're volume 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, I don't understand. Maybe it wouldn't fit, not sure. But I actually think I like the layout of the UK one with it at the top there a bit better. Anyway, there we have. Now, what I haven't been doing, I've got carried away with the vinyl. So let's hop back a little bit and just let's have a quick look at the CDs. So this is the 97 edition of Volume 2, and on this we do get 8 bonus tracks, which you can't see because that glare's really bad. But fantastic issue. I won't go into the booklet because these early ones don't really have much of a booklet. So there's volume 2. This was all planned, and I was going to go through these release by release. I've got carried away with the vinyl, and we've completely forgot. See, I haven't done this for a while. This is what happens. So there is the FTD release of volume 2, and as you can see, lots of glorious outtakes. I won't go through the booklet. I'm sure other channels have shown the booklet, but fantastic. Then we've got the 97 release of volume 3, and this gives us 6 bonus tracks. Can you see it there? There we go. And I really like the way they've done these, so that they have a really nice picture on the back, and I think these are great little releases, and you can pick up these for less than a tenner, so well worth getting. And of course, FTD version with plenty of bonus tracks. Volume 4, 97 version gives 6 bonus tracks. Great stuff. And finally, because we didn't get an FTD one of the next one, but there is volume 4, and again plenty of outtakes and bits and pieces. So CDs, I got there in the end. So we get to the last volume. Now the last volume is kind of the last hurrah, if you like, for this, and it's after Elvis has passed. So we're in March 1984, but they resurrect the concept of gold records to take into account all the million sellers that Elvis had since the issue of volume 4. Now I don't have an original vinyl press of volume 5, and that's simply because I'm holding out for one that has the 50th anniversary sticker on the cover. I've seen it come up plenty of times without that, but I want it with that. But I do have the Friday Music press, so the cover on that is exactly the same. And as you can see, we get more contemporary releases in terms of Elvis's recordings. So yeah, this is the Friday Music, so it does come in a gatefold, which the original didn't have. And this one is on gold vinyl, carrying on the theme of gold vinyl for gold records, and why not. And we did get a 97 CD release of that, and we got 6 bonus tracks on that one as well. So as I say, these are well worth picking up, this little series of these 97 releases, because you're getting the originals and you're getting bonus tracks on all of them, and all of them have got that gold records CD type design. So there's the series in sort of vinyl and CD form. Well, we got to CDs in the end, but there are a couple of little ones I think worth looking at. Now this, I believe this was a German only release. It says limited edition 6 cassettes. I do think it was Germany. I don't know what's making me think that. But this is a cassette release. And I don't have a cassette player, and I've no intention of getting a cassette player. Obviously I had one back in the day. But this popped up at a local antiques centre for £12. And when I opened it up, I realised that it gives you all the first 4 gold records on cassette. And then for good measure, you get Rock and Roll #1 and #2. Well, the first 2 albums anyway. But these have never been played, I don't think. They weren't sealed, but they're just in pristine condition. So I just thought that was a little novelty, the Gold Records volumes 1 to 4 and the first 2 albums in cassette form for £12. So as you do, I got that, but I've seen this come up on eBay since. Not that eBay is a great guide of anything, because there's a lot of greedy people out there, but I've seen this come up for the sort of £40 mark, so I didn't think 12 was too bad. Before we finish with Gold Records, there was of course this from a couple of years back, VPI release for Record Store Day, Le Disque en d'Or, Gold Records, and this is the first 3 albums, first 3 Gold Records on coloured vinyl, and I think, yeah, you get different takes. Rather annoyingly, when I got this, it was sealed, but it didn't have the hype sticker on, and I love my hype stickers, so I was a bit annoyed at that. But I think you get a poster, which isn't very well replicated, but maybe there's a reason for that. You get yourself a booklet, lots of pictures and information, and you get yourself all of the 3 albums in nice. Ooh, he said, "Ha, we don't want to do that, do we?" And we get, look at that, beautiful. I mean, it's smashed to pieces. No, it's not. But yeah, very, very nice indeed release of all 3. But I don't think I'm going to get any more of these out, because I don't want to drop them all over the floor, and I am running out of space. So before we finish on this monumental series, let's have a look at this one. Now, this came out a few years back, and this gives you the alternate Gold Records album collection. And what you get a little booklet giving you information about the releases and some nice pictures. But you get like alternate versions of each of the albums with alternate sleeves. So Volume 1, and as I say, they all have alternate takes on. So Volume 1, Volume 2, three, 4, and lastly 5. So yeah, really, really nice. That a really nice little alternate listen, and this does come up from time to time. It is quite hard to get your hands on now, but yeah, a nice little alternate version of that series. So Gold Records, let me know what you think in the comments. I just think it's if ever anything sums up Elvis's spectacular achievements in terms of chart success, in terms of sales success, it's that series of those Gold Records issued throughout his career to celebrate just what a huge influence he was on music in general, on the charts, on culture. You know, they're landmark releases, and every single one of them, bar none, even including the last 2 that perhaps weren't as strong concept wise as the early ones, but still great releases. All of them are a fantastic listen. So yeah, Gold Records, yeah, what can you say? It's mind-blowing. So that's that. As I haven't been on for a while, I thought I'd just finish with a couple of little bits that I've picked up recently. So last week saw the release from Via Vision in Australia of Easy Come, Easy Go on Blu-ray. Now Via Vision, they put out Paradise Hawaiian Style last year, and now they've given us Easy Come, Easy Go. Not his worst movie by any means. It's very watchable. Picture quality wise, the picture quality looks great. Sound wise, it has got a 5.1 mix. It does fluctuate around a bit, especially on the final scene, I Take Love. The mix on that is strange to say the least. His vocals seem to float in and out. But nevertheless, great to have this on Blu-ray. Great to have it in nice condition. I wouldn't say that it's been restored or cleaned up in any way. There's a lot of artifacts and dirt on some of this, but overall it's a great quality picture. And as I say, not his worst movie. Paradise of Wild Style, Double Trouble, Frankie and Johnny, I'm Looking at You, Easy Come, Easy Go, definitely not his worst movie. But what really annoyed me about this is when they announced it, there was no cover design, and then they came up with a cover design, and this is the cover. So they've obviously gone, well, you know, we need our graphic designers to put something together for this. Okay, fair enough. I don't mind that. But if you're going to release a Blu-ray of Easy Come, Easy Go, maybe don't put a photograph from Roustabout on the back. It's just, why does Elvis get this time and time again? Why don't these companies just pay a bit of care and attention? Just get somebody who knows to check them. But Roustabout, as my good friend David said, he's going to have trouble riding that motorbike at the bottom of the sea. But yeah, great to have, but come on, guys. What else have I picked up recently? Right, this was a fairly recent purchase. I know this came out 2023 on Victory Records. Our Memories of Elvis Volume 3. Really nice to have this one. Now, I got this one when this came out. It had 2 CDs with it. This didn't come with the CDs, and therefore I got it cheap. So I couldn't say no. And to be honest with you, most of these releases, when they come with CDs, I'm happy to have the vinyl. I don't really need the extra CDs, and actually, unless they've got loads of extra tracks on, then probably, yeah. And I think this did, but by and large, keep the cost down and just give us the vinyl, is my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Right, I got these two. Finding That Memphis Soul, Volume 1. Now, if anyone watched my 69 Revisited last year, and I went through all my 69 vinyl, I had the 3-volume alternate from Elvis in Memphis and Back in Memphis. And I think this is on the same label because a lot of the designs are quite similar. But this does have lots of different outtakes on. So I picked these up, and I picked these up at a nice price as well. Just stunning covers, and both of these are on clear vinyl, although it's not as clear as the last one I showed. This is more almost a milky, sort of creamy sort of colour, but just look at those covers. Awesome. And the final thing I wanted to show you, and it's a bit of a confession, this. So I've always been very down on the concept of these liquid vinyl releases. Now, they're not new things. Liquid vinyl started, I think the very first one was about 1978, the first experiments with liquid vinyl. But in recent times, it was Jack White that brought the concept back with better sealing so it didn't leak. And that was in 2012. So this stuff's been around for a while, and it's only in the last couple of years or so that people have cottoned on and started releasing some Elvis stuff on it. And I thought, yeah, it's a daft gimmick and I'm not interested, and by and large that's true, until they announced the 70th anniversary of the debut album. So to my mind, there was a genuine reason to do something a bit different, because it's the seminal debut album. It's the 70th anniversary. But what really attracted me was the fact that this is all logoed up with the HMV original covers and catalogue numbers and what have you. And, you know, I must admit, I would have liked that to be a little bit sharper. But I'm never going to get a pristine copy of the original HMV album, Rock and Roll. I'm just not. I'm not going to get a pristine one, and I don't really want a battered one. So I was drawn to that, and then I thought, well, okay. So I did it, and, you know, it is what it is. These things are really heavy because basically it's 2 albums pressed together, and then they've got the liquid in between them. But it's a gimmick, yeah. Will I get another one? No. But the fact it was the first album drew me in, so I did get one of these, and I got number 280 of 500. So yeah, I certainly won't be buying any more of them. They're too expensive, and as I say, a gimmick. But there we go. So that's it. That's kind of my update of things. Apart from, you may have noticed some difference at the back here. So anyone that watched my showing of the Elvis suitcase record player knows that, you know, I'd gone down that route, and I wasn't looking for an audiophile sound, and I stand by that. But what I found annoying was the fact that the preamp on it missed off the beginning second or so of tracks on albums. And to me, to get something to listen to music and then have to listen to the album and miss the first bit of each track, it's not right. So I couldn't go. I think I said at the time you could use the RCA out into other speakers, but the problem is it still went through the preamp. And then I hit upon this idea, well, actually it Bluetooth transmits out, so that goes completely past the preamp, and actually it plays the whole album. You don't miss anything out. Now, I know Bluetooth is not ideal, but actually I went through 3 different iterations of speakers. I went with some audio technical ones. They sounded great, but they just weren't loud enough. They just weren't bassy enough. Then I went with some Fluence ones that sounded great, but unfortunately capped the Bluetooth signal, so they didn't go very loud at all. So I've ended up with these Kanto YU6s. They sound great. They sound really, really good. I can actually play records on that Elvis record player, and they sound great. I've got a remote with it that enables me to adjust the bass and treble. They get a decent volume on them. Much better. So, you know, compared to playing them through the system itself, not only do I not skip the beginning of tracks, I get much better bass, much better stereo separation, much better volume. Win-win. So I've now managed to set this up now, so I'm nearly happy with it. Everything's just about where it needs to be. I've been rejigging a few things. You'll see there's a gap there on the wall because there's another little pitch you've got to go into there. But other than that, everything's how I want it. So everything is hunky-dory. All is well in the world. And all is certainly well in the world because tomorrow I'll be watching Epic on my TV in the comfort of my own room. Not quite the same as watching it on IMAX, but at least if I want to pop to the kitchen to get a snack, I can just pause it. So, you know, little things. So I really, really hope you've enjoyed that. It's been a long one, I know, but I knew it was going to be a long one because I haven't been on for so long. And maybe that's the way forward for me. Maybe I'll put stuff up not as regularly, but I will try and make them a bit longer. So those of you that can put up with me till the end actually get to see some content. But whatever you're doing, I hope you've had a great Easter. I hope you've enjoyed the Easter holiday. I hope you're all looking after yourselves, and I hope you're all looking forward to streaming Epic from tomorrow. I'm not sure when the Blu-ray of it's coming out. I think it might well be as late as June, so I've heard. The vinyl version of the soundtrack is supposed to be released in April, and it gives, on Amazon UK, it gives a release date of April, but it says that we're not getting it till June. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It's been great to come on. I have kind of missed not doing these, But as you can see, I am a bit rusty and things got a little bit wayward there, but we got there in the end. So look after yourselves, everyone. Take care. Till the next time. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.